views and opinions expressed in this program are those of the participants and do not necessarily reflect the views of BronxNet or the program underwriters.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Open, the one and only show that opens the Bronx and the rest of the world right to you. I'm your host, Daren, Jaime, and today we'll update you on what's happening in and around our borough, as well as across New York City. Coming up on today's show, we go front and center as we talk with attorney David Lesch. He's our legal correspondent, but he'll give us news in regards to the 2021 mayoral candidates. He had an opportunity to talk to them from a legal perspective. We'll hear about that a little later on in the show. Then afterwards, we'll discuss how one organization is assisting small businesses throughout the COVID-19 pandemic. Millions of dollars available for relief for small businesses. We'll get you connected. Also, we'll talk with the relationship expert on the red flags that you need to look out for between you and your partner. Are you avoiding? Are you ignoring? We'll discuss a little later on. And then finally, we'll learn some self-care tips for managing anxiety during this pandemic. More details on that a little later on in the show. So stay tuned because all this and much more is heading your way. Right now, we're officially open. Hello, everyone. I am Daren Jaime, and today is Wednesday, June 23rd, and you are watching Open, a live and interactive program that brings the Bronx and New York City straight to your TV set. We also want to welcome our viewers who are watching on Manhattan Neighborhood Network, as Open is being broadcast live simultaneously on the MNN channel. We encourage you to stay connected to us also on our social media platforms at BronxNet TV, and of course, you cannot forget our website at bronxnet.org. Well, a lot has certainly been going on throughout the course of this past week. Can't take you through everything, but we can bring you to a couple of things through our Bronx updates. We start off with news related to the COVID-19 pandemic. New York has reached its goal of at least giving one dose to at least 70% of New Yorkers, according to data from the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention. Now, the benchmark has been touted by New York State Governor Andrew Cuomo as the number the state needed to reach in order to lift virtually all safety restrictions, including capacity limits in bars, restaurants, as well as mandatory health screenings. Now, the governor stated once 70% of adults get at least one dose of the jab, the restrictions will be optional for retail, restaurants, offices, gyms, as well as amusement parks and hair salons, barbershops, and personal care services. Restrictions will still be in place for large-scale events and in places like schools, homeless shelters, as well as healthcare facilities. And those who haven't gotten the shot will still have to wear a mask for safety precautions. Well, in other news, New York State Comptroller Thomas DiNapoli released a report on the economic state of the Bronx. Our BronxNet reporter, Darissa White, follows this story and brings us the details.
COVID-19 ravished the Bronx, from unemployment to small business closures and public health, but now the Bronx is springing back to life.
The recovery has started, that it will happen, but it is going to take time.
The state comptroller's office released an economic report on the status of the Bronx, and it found, although the Bronx did not have the highest COVID positivity rates compared to the other boroughs, the Bronx suffered the most with the highest hospitalizations and death. The Bronx unemployment rate peaked at 25% of people out of work, the highest among the 5 boroughs. And although the pandemic forced many Bronx businesses to close, the borough is still increasing with business growth.
But then we came to the unexpected, COVID-19. The pandemic obviously stalled progress not just in the Bronx, but all across our city, all across our state. Unemployment rose significantly, worsening inequalities that had already existed.
The Bronx is on the way back, with 52% of Bronxites receiving at least one dose of the vaccine. Workers like Brad Nagel says that he can see a light at the end of the tunnel.
We're getting back into it, though. Businesses are opening. There's restaurants opening every week.
Nagel, a Gun Hill Brewery employee, was out of work for months due to the shutdown, which left him questioning, when will the Bronx return? He says the report makes things clear, the work that needs to be done, but the progress that has been made.
Bronx people building their Bronx streets in the Bronx.
The comptroller says that progress is acknowledging the disadvantages Bronx residents faced pre-pandemic.
So refocusing our efforts to make sure people get health care coverage, that we deal with issues like diabetes and asthma and obesity that contributed to those very negative outcomes from COVID.
Included in the report, the comptroller also mentions jobs coming back to the Bronx. Baldor and Chef Central are hiring as we speak. In Bronxwood, reporting for BronxNet, Darissa White.
And thank you, Darissa. And that is all the time we have for our Bronx updates. We want you to stay connected to us. Don't go anywhere. Open continues right after this. Most New Yorkers did vote in New York State's primary yesterday. For the first time, voters had the opportunity to choose from ranked choice voting for not just one candidate, but 5 listed in the order of preference. The winning candidate will still need to defeat their Republican nominee on November the 2nd, but the general election is largely a formality in a heavily Democratic New York. Here to share a little bit more about this and coming from a legal perspective, we're joined by David Lesch, who's also our legal correspondent and the host of today's verdict here on BronxNet. David, good to have you, brother.
Oh, Daren, always good to see you.
Go ahead, I'm sorry.
So we're just doing a little everything, a little practicing law, doing a little bit of the show. And, with respect to the mayoral series, it's been really a lot of fun. And I was able to interview every candidate, both Democratic and Republican. I gave everybody about 13 minutes. And, we ended up airing a special on BronxNet so the viewers could get a chance, to decide who they want. And it's been really exciting to spend 12 to 13 minutes, speaking with these, they're so talented. Those who are running for mayor, it's not like you just decide, I think I'll run for mayor. You need a resume that is so broad to be able to capture the attention of New York that it was really a treat for me. For everyone from Andrew Yang to Eric Adams to Sean Donahue, just keep on going right down the line to Curtis Sliwa, to Fernando Mateo. I gave them all a lot of time. And by the time I finished, I really feel like I had a chance to discuss every issue with them, and hopefully the viewers got a chance to see the interviews. And when the time comes for voting, hopefully they'll be making the right decision.
Making the right decision. As we know, we got to get down to November to really get to that place where the final decision will actually be made. And I know for you, talking to these elected officials, a lot of legal issues are coming up today. So share with us a little bit about some of the things that you wanted to hear mayor address that can really help you out from a legal perspective?
Well, first of all, we do a lot of false arrest claims in my office. There's a lot of issues in terms of police brutality. That's certainly an issue, in terms of, defunding the police. Is that a good idea, a bad idea? So we talked, I talked to the candidates, about the issues in terms of safety around the city, but also about the individual rights that I want to make sure my clients still have, and to make sure that they're protected. So we talked a little bit about that and the balancing of making sure that you're safe and the police are there for you, but at the same time they're not overstepping and they're not hurting you. I thought that was a very important topic, because when I would be discussing their candidacy, I also wanted to do it from the perspective of my clients who live in the South Bronx, and what it means for them to be able to get a business back up and running, to make sure they're protected with respect to COVID, to make sure that they're protected in their communities, that their apartments were taken care of, that NYCHA was being repaired. These were all things that I really wanted to get out there. And I think most of the candidates, had a sense of what I was asking. More often than not, they understood the needs of the Bronx. They needed Bronx voters. It's one of the bigger boroughs. And I think in terms of the legalities, they understood what I meant, and they understood how important it is that the voice of the Bronxite is heard. And I'm really hoping, in terms of the legal issues over the next 4 years, that whoever is in City Hall, that they'll make sure that they continue to hear the voice and the people from the Bronx. And that was really one of the main reasons I even interviewed them. I thought it was just so important for them to understand that.
Yeah, and I think it's important that we understand too, from a legal context, some of the challenges that you're actually facing in dealing with as all of us are in COVID-19. But as we talked before, we've had people on who said, listen, when we talk about the housing court, that's going to be a crisis, and a crisis that will continue to increase. But I want to talk about something that's really close and dear to you, and that's dealing with nursing homes. And I know that you've been working with this Article 81. So please introduce our viewers to Article 81 and some of the work that you're doing there.
Sure. Article 81 of the mental hygiene law permits a petition to be brought if you need a guardian or you want somebody to be protected who can't protect themselves. Many times they're in the community or nursing homes, assisted living facilities. A petition's brought, and then a judge will appoint either a court evaluator, somebody to help evaluate the situation, make it easier for the court, and which will, the court evaluator will then testify at a hearing. Sometimes the person who's incapacitated will actually need a lawyer appointed for them. That would be somebody who's considered to be counsel for the AIP, the alleged incapacitated person. And finally, after the hearing, the court will make a determination as to whether a guardian is needed over the person and or property of the particular incapacitated person. And you could be any player in this particular Article 81 proceeding. I many times before COVID have been the court evaluator. I've been counsel for the alleged incapacitated person, and I've also been appointed guardian for them over the course of their lifetime until they unfortunately pass away. Well, now with COVID, I've been doing this virtually. So yesterday I was counsel for somebody who was refusing medical treatment. This particular individual did not want to have a particular surgery, but the hospital believed they needed the surgery, or they may not make it over the next couple of weeks because of the infection. So a petition was brought by the hospital. There was a court evaluator who was also there, and I was appointed counsel for this particular individual, arguing on his behalf that he did not want this surgery. The judge would eventually make the decision. But the great thing about the new virtual world that we're now seeing is that this was done very quickly. We didn't have to go to a nursing home, which is what I've had to do in the past. That would mean the judge would have to be there, court personnel would have to be there, court stenographer would have to be there, court attorney, or the court evaluator, myself. We could bypass that. And within a 3-hour period during the hearing yesterday, it was all done on the record, and a decision's being made today. So, I'm just so happy with the way that is progressing now. And I think it is one of the benefits, if there is any, in terms of the COVID landscape is this new virtual legal world. Some of it will continue even when the courthouse opens up, which it hasn't really opened up yet for attorneys, but when it opens up, I think this new Article 81 landscape will continue this way. It's easier, it's safer, and it's more expeditious. That's how I think it's going to be.
What have we heard? Because we know in order to hear a case, you need a judge, right? And we know that these cases are going to continue to rise. Look at what's happening with housing court. I mean, I think we're going to see an influx after this moratorium is over of more housing cases. Is there any talk about increasing the bench to be able to deal with the demand that you guys are dealing with from, a legal perspective?
Well, listen, we've just started jury trials. So, at the very least, at least jurors are coming in, but there's such a backlog, Daren. You're so correct, especially in housing court. There are so many, tenants who want repairs and things that are made. And there are tenants who are not paying and landlords who want to evict them. There's so many things going on. And there is a shortage of judicial personnel. There is, and there's a budget issue. So I think this backlog, unfortunately, is going to be here for a while. I don't know where we even start. Remember, there are a lot of cases, certainly in the civil field, that have not been tried. There are people who've been waiting to have their day in court. When are the full jury trials are going to start coming again? Courthouse isn't even open. It's only for special trials that we're letting attorneys in. I'm thinking September, things start to really open up. And by the beginning of next year, I'm not going to say we're back to normal, but we're getting closer and closer. And hopefully the Office of the Court Administration will give the Bronx more judges to be able to help with the backlog. But that's all I can say is just I hope that's going to happen.
Yeah. This virtual environment, do you foresee it continuing in your realm? More mediations, more cross-examinations? Do you see this happening as the way of the future?
Look, you can see from my background here, I'm not even in Manhattan and I'm not in Bronx today. I'm out in Long Island. It's easy for me. I'm practicing law. I did this hearing yesterday for 3 hours. I cross-examined an orthopedist. I cross-examined a psychiatrist. I did this all the same way I'm talking to you right now. Made life a lot easier for me. But no, in terms of picking juries, I have to do that in person. I'm not going to be able to do that this way. So part of me hopes that some things stay like this, depositions, court conferences makes it much easier for everybody involved, but yet I do need to be in person, at least in my office, to meet my clients, face to face. And when I start picking juries, you can't do that this way. So I think there'll be a little of both. It's a whole new landscape. There'll be winners and losers through this. The per diem attorneys who covered cases in court and made, money that way, well, they've kind of been edged out. We don't need them anymore virtually. But at the same time, you are going to need an attorney to get in there and pick a jury in person. They still have a job. So, I'm not quite sure. And even from broadcasting, look at this, Daren. The only reason I was able to interview all those candidates for mayor is because it's easy.
Right.
It's easy getting guests. I'm sure you understand that. It's easier having people to talk to this way, not have to come into the studio. So everything's changing, and I just don't know where everything's going to land. I mean, maybe you have some thoughts on it.
Let's be honest. I mean, you're a host. I'm a host. We've been doing this for a minute. Certainly for us, our reach has been greater. We've had an opportunity to reach more people than ever before by way of guests with accessibility, because either they have the time or they're willing to do something virtually. And no, they're not going to worry about getting caught in traffic.
Right.
They don't have to necessarily come to the studio. They get the same amount of face time as they would, sometimes even maybe a couple minutes more, being from a virtual perspective. So I do know from a guest perspective, they like it. I like it to have the ability to talk to more people. But sometimes I do definitely miss the studio flow of having, those people behind the camera. I love my producer, Latricia. She's awesome. But there was a family feel, and you kind of miss the family. But as far as doing the work and getting the work done and getting the product done, certainly we could do it, and sometimes even do it at a higher capacity.
Yeah, I feel the same way you do. I like the fact that I'm getting guests that I've never gotten before. Councilmen, assemblymen, state senators. I was a legal show, and I've kind of morphed a little into the political realm only because I've been able to get the guests, and now they like coming on. It's been a labor of love. But you're right, though. It's nice when I was on your show consistently, and I was there. I was always in the studio. I got to see all my friends. I got to see everybody. But remember, it's still a 45-minute commute from my office to the studio, waiting, getting mic'd up, coming back to the office, practicing law in the afternoon. This is really much easier. But yes,
Right.
I do miss the family aspect of it. I really do.
Yeah, and I think that, it's something that we'll be taking a look at, going forward in the future. But I do know also from your perspective, from a legal perspective, that a lot of people are going to be looking at what can we do virtually to try to mitigate some of this backlog? What can we do to try to help to move things along more expediently? And I definitely believe that hybrid virtual will continue post-COVID and for some time to come.
I will tell you this, the only one who really, couldn't change was, when my wife's a dentist. That's it. You can't practice dentistry virtually. That's just the way it is. So there are some professions that
I can't get a virtual extraction.
I don't think it's possible. Although, you never know. I don't really think it is. So she's been back in there, from the minute the dental office has opened up. But for a lot of us in this whole new landscape, it's just the new normal. I just don't know where we're heading. It's kind of exciting at the same time.
It is exciting, and it's exciting to have you on. And unfortunately, we're out of time. But David, great to have you sharing with us, and thanks for being with us here on Open.
It's always a pleasure. Say hello to everybody from me.
All right, David. And the one part he left out, listen, if you want more information about him too, you can also follow him on Twitter at David Lesch at Today's Verdict. Listen, we encourage you, don't go anywhere. We've got more show, more Open to open to you right after this.
We know that people are dealing with the health crisis, but there's also a lot of food insecurity.
We're giving out healthy food options, and that's what's key here.
If you're a senior, you have a disability, they'll actually deliver meals to you.
The residents are anxious, they're worried, they're scared, they want to be tested.
When things were happening in our community, and we couldn't get the help.
There's almost a presumption of criminality that attaches to your skin color.
The site will prioritize those who are at highest risk in the population.
If you feel symptoms and you'd like to visit one of these COVID-19 testing sites here in the Bronx, you may call the State Health Department's hotline.
Important to note about this site is no reservations are needed. This is a walk-in clinic.
A lot of us are out of work and looking for something to do.
We have the machinery and the skills to make large scales of these masks and gowns.
Take care of your people. It's going to go way further than we actually can understand.
Right now, employees like myself are just adjusting to the new reality.
Reporting from BronxNet,
and welcome back to the show. Governor Andrew Cuomo announced applications are open for the $800 million COVID-19 pandemic small business recovery grant program. Now, more than 330,000 small and micro businesses are potentially eligible for the program, including 57% of the state's certified MWBEs. Now, the application site for the program will be powered by Lendistry, a minority-led community development financial institution. And here to share a little bit more about the grant and the availability is the CEO of Lendistry, Everett Sands. And Everett, glad to have you here on Open.
Thank you. Glad to be here. Appreciate it. Thank you.
Yeah. Looks like you'll be navigating some precious help for a lot of our businesses across the city, particularly in the borough of the Bronx. We know a lot have been affected by the pandemic, the lack of PPP, getting that, but yet and still an opportunity to really get back on their feet and make things better.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we've seen a lot of, obviously bad things happen, over the course of the last, 16 to 18 months. Really, really excited to help some of these small businesses. We've been helping them in a variety of different programs, but really excited to bring it to the state and help the multiple businesses within the state, as well as absolutely those within the Bronx.
Yeah. So walk us through a little bit about how the program works and how businesses can actually get connected.
Yeah, so I think the first way to think about it is there's three ways for businesses to get help. The first way is through partners. There are various partners throughout the state and specifically, obviously, in the Bronx that can help in terms of getting through this. They can watch a video, which I'll give you some information on the website shortly, and then they can read about it. They can read one of the application guides. NY Small Business Recovery is where they want to start. So nysmallbusinessrecovery.com is where they want to start. It's going to give them all the information on the grant. It's going to give them the details on how to apply. It's going to give them the eligibility criteria. It'll give them those videos that they can watch. It'll also give them webinars if they might want to watch it maybe in a different language, or they might want to just hear someone else talk about it besides you and I.
A little bit more about eligibility. Certainly, we don't want to tell. I mean, we can't give everything out right now, but tell us a little bit about who could potentially be eligible for these.
Sure, absolutely. So these are going to be small businesses, and the best way to think about it first is is revenue. So in 2019, you can make any revenue. You can make $10,000. You can make $1 million. You can make $10 million. 2020, the max you can make is 500,000, and the minimum is 25,000. Now, the key between 2019 and 2020, no matter what your revenue is, you have to show a 25% revenue loss. The thought process here is fairly simple, that they want to see that you actually took a loss or you had harm to the business as it relates to COVID. So if you made $1 million and then all of a sudden you make 1.5 million, then that thought process is that you did fairly well in COVID. And there are businesses like that. If you think about your logistics business, I don't know about you, Daren, but Amazon seems to come to my house 2-3 times a day. So that driver is doing okay, right? So that's not who we're looking for, right? We're looking for maybe the restaurant that closed or the business that wasn't able to stay open as a result of either mandates by the government or possibly just COVID in general.
Yeah. What has been the biggest challenge that you've heard from businesses during this time? Because certainly a lot has gone on. Some have actually had to close their doors. But what are some of the challenges that you've been hearing?
Yeah, I mean, the way Lendistry tries to function is we really try to think about how to best serve small businesses. As a leader myself, I tend to think COVID was the call to action. The situation with Floyd and others was kind of like, hey, rip up your call to action and try to 10x it. And so when Lendistry as a community development financial institution decided we were going to jump in, we said, well, how could we change the game? And one of the things we thought about, myself personally, as someone who's been in lending for 22 plus years, was, well, we need to become the deployers of capital, and we need to sit at the table when there's an opportunity to decide how the decisions are being made in terms of the deployment of capital. And so what you'll see here is one of the things that we picked up from some of our constituents and some of those small businesses that we asked. First is, this is not a first come, first serve program. So if you didn't apply on the first day or the second day or the third day or the 10th day, you still have an opportunity to apply. Second is be conscious and be intentional about who you're trying to get the money to. So you notice initially I talked about revenue loss, but there's also, we're looking at socially and economically disadvantaged individuals and their small business owners. And we're trying to concentrate on those individuals to try to help them get the need that they might want. The third thing is geographical distribution, right? And that goes two ways. You might be in a rural area where you haven't received money. You might be in the Bronx where, there's a lot of people and maybe in a lot of small businesses, and maybe that geographical distribution needs to be looked at a different way. And so one of the ways we're looking at it differently is we're saying geographical distribution plus let's see what you also received. So let me give you an example of that. If you're a restaurant, you were lucky enough to get the restaurant revitalization program, you basically got all of your losses covered between 19 and 20. So while yes, you were a victim of COVID, you've now got 100% back. You are not the same as the business owner who wasn't able to receive the restaurant revitalization program. And so we're looking at that as well in terms of looking at not only geographical distribution, but capital distribution now. And so that's another element that we've added into this one. Again, we think that's going to help the small business owners who've not received help or have received less help than others, because now we want to have equitable distribution of funds that are being administered by the state.
How has it been in terms of getting the word out? Because many times you hear from people access the resources, right? I didn't know this was out there. I didn't know, or it's already gone and now we find out. What's it been like for you in terms of reaching across the masses?
Yeah, well, so first of all, thank you again for the opportunity to be here. And I think when you think about getting the word out, it's a couple of different things. Look back in the day, it was kind of simple, especially when you want to hit the African-American community. You go to the church, you go to like your fraternities and sororities, and you go to, maybe a book club or something, right? Right now, you can't do it exactly that way. So we're doing that plus. And the plus is leveraging partners across the state, as I mentioned. And so trying to get those partners who are on the grassroots, having a technological aspect to this. So we have a QR code that someone can literally take a picture with their phone and they can get access to the application right away. We'll share that with you if you don't have it. And then, the other side of this is trying to use traditional media, right? So that's newspapers, that's the media, obviously, that we're doing today. That's anything you can think of in media, we're trying to get that word out. And that's from the state level as well as the local level. And so we're hoping that we get to the majority of people. One thing that we had to worry about when we first went through these programs, this is our 13th program, just so you know, But one of the things we had to worry about in the beginning was kind of like the paperwork and different things like that. And I'm not saying we don't have to worry about that here, but we do have the benefit of, generally speaking, most businesses have either gotten their paperwork together or tried to get their paperwork together. So we still have that element, but this is going to be more of a just get the word out that we're really, really conscious of. And we're using everything from, the Twitter, the social media to, again, the traditional sources, right? So everything we possibly can to get the word out. There'll still, unfortunately, be those that didn't hear about it. So hopefully we can spread the word. We're actually going to do some of the grassroots marketing in terms of the door-to-door with various vendors. That's coming up here soon as well.
Yeah. Sometimes with businesses we know, and particularly small businesses, we hear the challenge that getting that paperwork in order can really be a huge barrier to overcome. Are there any resources in place to help somebody in that area be able to get their paperwork in order so they can successfully apply?
Absolutely. So there's roughly 60 partners that are on the ground. You can come into their office, obviously, amid COVID restrictions, so wear your mask, and, they might want to do an appointment instead of you just walking in. But there are roughly 60 partners that can help. What comes top of mind, of course, is the New York SBDC, NYS, SBS. So there are various different sources that are out there that can help in terms of getting the paperwork together. They can also call into the various partners who are willing to help them. Again, the webinars are going to help. They're going to give the details of what information needs to be provided. If you go to the application guide on NY Small Business Recovery, it actually gives samples of some of the documents. It walks you through the application line by line. If you go online and you hit apply now, there are 1 to 5 minute videos in every single section. So you can either listen to the person narrating through the sections, or you can watch someone go through the sections. And so we think all of these things are going to help that small business owner and not make it as daunting. Even uploading documents, there's a video on that to help in terms of how to upload documents and different things like that. Again, these are different things that we've learned through the progress of doing multiple different applications. And this is the feedback we actually got from small business owners saying, look, I need you to make it like I was in 2nd grade or 3rd grade for me. Not necessarily because I don't understand it. I'm just so used to making my widgets that this is a foreign process for me. And so I need as much help as I possibly can get. I should also say that if you call into the call center, there's language services. So you can set an appointment to have something in language if you wanted to, depending on what that is, application, document upload, or other things related to the program.
Well, everyone, thank you. A lot of information, helpful information. We're going to make sure, and we have made sure that this word has gotten out. We will continue to do our best to get the word out. Everett Sands, also the CEO of Lendistry. Thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you for the opportunity. I appreciate it.
All right, Everett Sands, CEO of Lendistry. Listen, now if you want more information about this, please visit the website lendistry.com. Again, lendistry.com. Now we need to take a quick break. Don't go anywhere. Open continues coming up right after this. Well, welcome back to the show. Healthy relationships, they're important for our mental well-being. Now, those relationships also bring positivity to your life. However, some people can be so caught up in a relationship that we actually miss the red flags. Well, they can actually indicate whether or not you stay in a relationship or not. The question is, what kind of red flags should you be looking for in your relationship? Well, joining us to tell us a little bit more, give us some details, we've got the author and relationship expert, Shauntay L. Dunbar, who's here with us. And Shauntay, good to have you back.
Hi, thanks for having me. I love it here.
Yeah, listen, a lot's been going on. I mean, you know, we've been in COVID, we've been behind closed doors, but
quarantined up. Yep.
Yeah, I know. But talk to us about these people who are booed up, and this relationship red flag is real big, because sometimes people don't notice the red flags until after the fact.
Is it that they don't notice, or is it that they're ignoring them? Right?
That's the person, right?
Because sometimes, you know, you get into a situation or a relationship where you just want to be with someone so much that you will allow certain behaviors and things that you probably wouldn't appreciate or like in different circumstances, but because of your environment and the state that you're in, you're a little more open to settling for things you're not happy about, right? So when it comes to these red flags, the first thing you definitely want to do is acknowledge that they exist, right? Ignoring them is only going to get you in trouble in the long haul. So by acknowledging this and saying like, whoa, what was that, right? Instead of dodging it like the Matrix, now you can say, okay, so why is this triggering me, right? What is it about this that is making me feel uneasy and uncomfortable? And then once you do those two things, acknowledge it, and then find out why it's happening, then you have to speak it out loud. Speak it to your partner. When you do this, I don't feel good about it, or this makes me feel a certain way, right? And if your partner loves you and wants to, you know, be better with you and for you, they're going to change that behavior. Some people do things not realizing that it could be triggering for other people, but if you put them on notice, then it'll change. So red flags are very tricky because they're different for each person. So you really have to understand, like, what is my triggers? And is it a big deal? Am I being nitpicky? Or is this really something that I haven't healed from?
Yeah, well, walk me through that, because when we sit around and we talk about red flags, there are some common red flags that you can actually find in relationships. For somebody who may be blind or has the blinders on, what are these red flags that potentially we're not paying attention to until we're either in an incident, it's too late, or it's over?
Right. So a lot of people have things that trigger them with like phones, right? So if the person puts their phone face down on the table, right, you're kind of like, well, why isn't it face up, right? Or why isn't it on the table at all? That could be a trigger for you, because maybe you were in a past relationship where someone was hiding something from you, and that was one of their behaviors, flipping the phone down on the table, right? Or every time you mention something, it turns into an argument because they're not trying to hear, you know, what you're saying. They're so busy defending themselves that, you know, they're not acknowledging your feelings or don't care to. Or they try to blame you for things that you had nothing to do with, right? So maybe you're dealing with a manipulator or a narcissist who's trying to make you feel bad about yourself and make you feel like, you know, they're the only person that loves you and wants to be with you and will deal with your crap. And so you're like, well, I guess I just have to take it. This is as good as it gets. Well, that's not the case at all. You're great. So go be great with some money great.
Yeah. So with the red flag, obviously there has to be some conversation. What's the advice if I want to talk to my partner about the red flags, but for fear of argument or how it's going to be perceived, I really don't want to have that convo? So what advice do you give?
I would say do it in like a neutral space, right? Definitely don't have the conversation in the bedroom, because that's where you want to be most intimate, right? So don't taint that place. So do it in like a living room, or, you know, going out to eat or walking in a park or something, and make it about you, right? When you do these certain things, this is how I feel. This is what I think, right? Instead of saying you always and you make me feel like, instead take the responsibility of it, right? And then once you do that, your partner, if it's a good partner, they'll help you work through it. If it's a bad partner, they'll be like, well, this is what it is. You're going to deal with it or not. And then you can make a choice, right? I'm going to stay or I'm going to go. Hopefully you go.
Yeah. Get the stepping. What have you learned through the COVID-19 pandemic about this whole dating and relationship issue? Are there some things that are coming out of this right now?
Oh, yeah. I think people are actually learning more about themselves, right? And I think more people are, it could go both ways, right? There are some people who are like just settling, like, listen, slim pickings, this is as good as it's gonna get. We met online, you cool, let's try it. And then there's other people like, I have standards and I'm not going to lower my standards just because you're, not trying to meet expectations, right? So you just learn more about what you like, what you don't like, and you learn about your red flags, your triggers, and what you're going to deal with and how you're going to move on to be a better person. If this person is not adding value to your life, then why are you even bothering? Yeah.
So what are the topics you're talking about these days?
Oh, now that the world's opening up, everybody wants to know how to flirt, where to go, what pictures to put on their dating profiles now. And now people are even putting their vaccine card on their dating profiles. Like, I'm good, I'm ready to go. It's the craziest thing. But I think what people need to understand now is more so about, like, yes, the world is opening up, but now you have to learn to open up as well, right? So it's not just, I'm in these streets, but it's also, what am I sharing? And am I confident enough to do this? Because, we do date our confidence level. That's a whole nother topic for another day.
Listen, I'm still struggling with the fact of, like, I need to put on my profile, looking for a date, fully vaccinated. Who does that? But the sign in the times in which we live in, huh?
It is. And it's like people are just so desperate for human interaction. They will give you any information. Whether you ask for it or not, they just volunteer it. You're like, okay, oversharing, but thanks. But these, you want to have those kind of conversations and see where a person's head is at, so it's healthy communicating, right?
Yeah. So I'm gonna tell people publicly what I tell you privately. I roll at your skits, diving in stilettos. I mean, I just find it to be like, I holler sometimes. And I'm like, you are so on point. But share with the people a little bit about diving in stilettos and some of the stuff you got going on.
So Diving in Stilettos First, Memoirs of Dating Mister Right Now is my book about my dating life and shenanigans in New York City. It's available on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, wherever books are sold. Often on my IG page, Diving in Stilettos First, there are underscores under each word. I do skits off the book based on dating. I give you dating tips every Tuesday. I cook with celebrity chef Rashawn every Thursday. We make a fun vegan meal. We talk about relationships. I have her view podcast that I do every Tuesday. And now I'm super excited because Diving in Stilettos' first short film is finally ready to go and will have its first premiere at the Five Shorts Film Festival in Philly, August 21st. So look for the short film based on the book. It's going to be hilarious. If you're laughing now, you're going to have abs in August.
Listen, I've been laughing ever since, and I've been watching skits. It literally, my day's intense, but when I tip off to that and I see that, I'm definitely like hollering and saying like, oh, I know some people like that, or she is just crazy. It's absolutely worth watching. Talk to me about this, because did you ever see the emergence of where you are today out of just your normal dating life?
Oh my goodness. If you asked me 10 years ago, would I be here? I would have never fathomed the idea of being an author, let alone a filmmaker, a director, or just being comfortable enough in the camera to be silly, right? But that's part of your growth. Like, I've learned throughout the years to really just laugh at myself. And once I started doing that and everybody was laughing with me, I was like, this is good. We're all healing together. So you're not alone.
Yeah. I am not alone. Listen, before we leave, tell people how they can get in touch with you.
Yeah, so you can check me out on Instagram, Diving in Stilettos First, underscores under each name. I'm also on my website, divinginstilettosfirst.com. And yeah, check out your girl. I'm out here. Google me, baby.
That's it. She is Googleable. That's it. Hey, listen, thank you so much for being with us, Shauntay. Obviously, as we get closer to August, don't forget, come on back. We'll have you back. Share a little bit about that. And congratulations on all the great things that are happening for you.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it. This is a great platform. Thank you.
Yes, Shauntay L. Dunbar, our guest here, talking about relationships and the red flags and what to do and what not to do. But listen, we got more show. Stay with us. Open continues coming up right after this. And welcome back to the show. Well, throughout the COVID-19 pandemic, many individuals have been struggling in the issue of mental health. It's been also negatively impacting their lives. Well, as states begin to transition back to a pre-pandemic life, it may also cause some increased anxiety about reopening for many. There's anxiety, there's stress, there's fear, there's worry, sadness, as well as exhaustion. These are some of the things. And not to even mention numbness. Here to share a little bit more about how to deal with these emotional responses to the pandemic, how the impact is affecting people's mental health. We're pleased to be joined by the owner of Washington Heights Wellness, Dr. Rosanna de la Cruz, and glad to have you here, Dr. Rosanna.
Thank you, Jaime. Glad to be here as well.
Listen, when we talk about this, I talked about this in the intro. I said that going back is a good thing for a lot of people, but for others, there is this anxiety, there's this stress, and this worry. One would think like, okay, things are opening up, things are getting better, but it's actually in some cases really messing with some people's mental health.
Absolutely. And any change that we go through, including getting back to the social life, which is also part of our health, can create some discomfort. Then again, that's part of our growth. Change is part of growth. And it is part of what we are here to do, to grow. And so, yes, there is a lot of discomfort going back, especially when we're not certain 100% that the virus is well controlled. Then again, our vaccination rates are much higher. New York has been one of those states with very, very low cases and no deaths for the past few weeks. So we have great statistics that tell us that it's okay to start in a prudent way, continue to interact with our loved ones and become social again. So there is absolutely anxiety behind that. And I'll be sharing some tips in how to manage the transition.
Yeah, we're talking about anxiety. Let's talk about stress, because stress is what a lot of people are carrying. And as we carry stress, I don't think that many people understand sometimes the dynamic of what that does and what it causes. So why don't you share with a little bit of our viewers about some of the things that stress causes when it goes unmanaged and unchecked?
Absolutely. Stress is one of those factors, is not considered a disease, yet it plays a role in every disorder. What happens when we are constantly stressed, we turn the body into a machine that is causing a whole lot of anxiety. So stress, if you want to see it as the cousin of anxiety or a brother. So when we are constantly stressed, the body doesn't have enough time to recuperate and regenerate from our daily activities. That's why it's important to become stress resilient. And some of the ways that we can see whether stress is playing a major part in our life is when we feel exhausted constantly, whether we rest or not. We have mental fogginess, lack of concentration. Insomnia is one of the reasons, one of the disorders that we can start having if we are constantly stressed. We have to be able to find different ways to relax, because constant high levels of stress can lead to anxiety, which the difference is very simple. If you worry for no reason, if you start feeling numbness, which you mentioned at the beginning, in some parts of your body, you go to the doctor, they say everything checks out. They usually tell you it could be stress or anxiety. So once you start experiencing the physical symptoms of stress, it's already merging into anxiety. So we're definitely going to have some physical symptoms once we continue to lead a life with high levels of stress.
Yeah. And a little earlier, we talked about how to get back into the workplace, because that's a big stressor. How do I get back into the workplace? How do I get back into this normal routine? It might be the kids going back to school.
Yes.
It might be simply me just going back to doing what I normally used to do. So what are some tips in helping?
Well, here in New York City and New York in general, the state, we are faced with so many factors. We have to work. This is one of the states where people live a fastest life, and I would say a highly stressed life because of all the moving parts. Our transportation system is, a whole state is meant to live a life with a little bit higher speed than other places. So the first thing that I recommend my patients is to really start the day with mindfulness. So whether it's 5 minutes, even before you get out of bed, to just really sit there and have an intention on how the day is gonna go. Have a plan for hydration. It's been proven that dehydration can increase high levels of stress and anxiety, because if our body doesn't have enough hydration, which most of our body content is water, then what happens is that we can feel more fatigue, more sluggishness, and yet we still have to do everything that we have to do. So it's pushing the body to do more when we're actually not giving the body what it needs. As well as making sure that we go into bed at a specific time at night. Even if we don't feel sleepy, we have a routine. We do it for our kids. So now we have to parent ourselves and make sure that we're getting 7 to 8 hours of sleep. And most importantly, always prioritizing self-care. And what that means is really looking for things that bring you joy. We're always trying to play a part and do what we have to do as adults. It also is important to keep our self-care and our joy in check. What brings us joy? And dedicating some time daily or weekly to spend time having joy, whatever that means to that person. Some people may love dancing, some people may love singing, or just spending time with the family. So prioritizing self-care and is one of the best ways to manage anxiety. And understand that above all, we are humans and we are resilient. Our bodies are constantly healing. The earth is constantly moving, and we're here. We've been here for many, many years, and things always work out for the best. We've gone through so much trauma, so also looking for help, whether it's a support system through counseling, natural medicine, which we treat anxiety here because we know that high levels of anxiety and stress can lead to other disorders such as poor blood circulation, high levels of inflammation, and hormonal imbalances, which you treat very effectively here. So most important, most of the stuff that we can do for self-care, we can do on our own, making sure that we also staying active. Because although sometimes we don't have enough energy to stay active, just taking a quick 15 minutes walk after work can really give us a boost of oxytocin, which is a substance that we create that makes us feel happy and more relaxed.
Yeah. And for many people, obviously, self-care is not first on the priority list, especially if you work a highly stressful or a highly demanding job, or your life just really takes you to a place where you're filled with responsibilities. You gave some ideas about self-care and really how important that is. Are you finding that more and more people are now moving to that place of self-care, particularly after COVID-19? Because there has been an awareness shift.
Absolutely. Most of my patients are looking for solutions that don't include necessarily constant medication. And by the way, we do need medication in some cases. If we are at a very high level of anxiety, there are medications that can help, and that can help us get back into what normal is for us. Absolutely. Making time for self-care is almost as important as showing up to work and doing all of the other things we think is most important. I can tell you from a personal experience, in my past, I led a life that was very stressed out, and self-care came last if there was any time available. And I have learned throughout the years that if I don't care for myself, I will not be as productive. And also, I won't be able to help others. So that includes, in our case, our family members. We all have people that we want to be part of their life. So the best way to help others is to help ourselves, so we can be in a place of giving instead of constantly giving without the reserves. At some point, our health is almost like a bank account. If we keep taking and not placing in our savings account, then eventually we're going to go on red. And that's when all of those physical manifestations start to happen: lack of sleep, being very stressed out, the need for some enablers such as coffee and sugar, which will definitely play a part into other chronic conditions. I'm not against coffee, but if you are highly stressed out and you have a lot of anxiety, coffee and sugar are some of those neurotransmitter disruptors that can exacerbate or make our anxiety and stress levels worse. And it's important not to use those as enablers.
Yeah.
As enablers to help us do more instead of just taking our time, making sure that we're hydrated, that we're sleeping well, that we are loving ourselves. We are all with God. We are within our own skin 24 hours. And because of this, it's extremely important that we turn to ourselves and love ourselves more every day with a lot of kindness, but also pay some self-care, which are usually the most simple thing that comes up to your mind, such as, taking 15 minutes rest or having one more cup of water than you're having on a daily basis, or one more hour.
Yeah, those things can really make all the difference, in a person's life. And so I want to thank you for sharing with us. Of course, you'll have to come back, talk a little bit more as we get further out of this pandemic. We're going to need some more resources. So Dr. Rosanna de la Cruz, thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you, Jaime. Have a wonderful week, and thank you for having me. It will be an honor to come back.
Yes. And I want to tell people, listen, if you want more information for Dr. De La Cruz, do me a favor. You can reach her website at acupuncturelocal.com. Again, acupuncturelocal.com, or you can dial 646-922-7647, and you can get more information coming there. Now, I want to let you know we've come to the end of our show today. I want to thank all of our guests for joining us. But most of all, I want to thank you, the viewer, for tuning in. Now, if you missed any part of today's show, you can catch the recablecast here on Broadcast Channel 67, also Verizon Files Channel 2133, or watch us anytime on the web at bronxnet.org. If you're looking for a brand new episode, well, just hang on. Friday is coming, and when Friday comes, my girl, Rena Valentine, she'll bring you the latest in arts and entertainment and the things that you need to know. Until then, I'm Daren Jaime saying take care, God bless, and most of all, keep this channel wide open.